Hello and welcome to the people them. My name is Yolanda and welcome to Flash Black Friday, where every Friday I will flash black to a revolutionary hero who has made an impact within the community that is what? Black. Flash Black Friday is about restoring faith within the Black community. I mean, everything that is going on around the world right now, it is dreadful. Sometimes you don't even want to log on to social media because it's just like, what bull crap am I going to be fed today, you know? And so I feel like we need something positive to look forward to. So every week I am going to give you a hero who has made a positive impact within our community, okay? Every time Black History Month comes around, you know, you find yourself scrambling, like, who am I gonna discuss apart from the mainstream heroes, right? So I wanna talk about some people who we have not really heard of and, you know, made a difference. So make sure, if you're interested in hearing about these revolutionary heroes, make sure you like and subscribe so that you can get notified every week when I upload a new hero. So today I decided to talk about a woman who goes by the name of Nanny of the Maroons. Now, I decided for my first video I would talk about somebody who is kind of like-minded with me. What best to talk about somebody who comes from my birth country, Jamaica, and is a female just like me. You know, whatever. But the woman who I'm going to discuss today is Nanny. I don't know if you've heard of her, but if you have, then you know you should already know who I'm talking about. But if you haven't, then you're gonna learn something new today. Then you're gonna learn something new today. All right, so stay tuned. So she actually goes by several names: Nanny of the Maroons, Queen Nanny, Granny Nanny, Grandy Nanny, but I will just call her Nanny, leader of the Jamaican Maroons. Nana from Ghana means the chief or an elderly, and Ni meaning mother. There is not much known about her early life. For example, her full name, her actual birthplace, and her parents' name. There's really not much known, but the impact that Nanny so boldly left behind rendered her an iconic figure in Jamaican history, being the first and only female heroine in Jamaica. Nanny was also married to a man named Adu, who was also a fellow Maroon. It's also said that Nanny actually had a sister named Sakusa, and Sakusa had a baby. And when Nanny was trying to free her sister from captivity, it was said that the baby cried, and that led to the recaptivity of her sister. Nanny was believed to have had 2 children. I wasn't able to really pull up that much information on it, but some say she had 2 children that lived on plantation farms, and others say that she never had any children at all. There's 2 theories surrounding Nanny's arrival in Jamaica. Some say, I should be careful. Some say that she arrived as a free woman with her own slaves, and we'll get into that just a little bit later on. And others say that she was sold to a plantation farmer in St. Thomas, and boy, was he in for a surprise. Nanny and her 4 brothers would actually burn down this plantation farm. After they burnt down the farm, she and her 4 brothers, along with other escapees, actually fled to Blue Mountain, aka the Great Negro Town, and that is where the community would formulate. Nanny had a community of just over 600 women and children, and 300 fighting men. Now, this story is just proof that size does not matter. No, it doesn't. And don't be nasty. But who are these Maroons? So let me take you back to 1494, when a man named Christopher Columbus, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about, discovered Jamaica. He later renamed this Santiago, which would be ruled underneath the Spanish for just over 2 decades before the British soldiers just walked in and took over. The British had just cut off their king's head. Oliver Cromwell sent out a fleet of British soldiers to capture Hispaniola. Hispaniola was heavily guarded with the Spanish soldiers. So rather than go home, the British soldiers decided they were going to stop off in Jamaica, which was a supply distribution place for Hispaniola and Cuba at the time. Now, for those of you who don't know, Hispaniola was the Haiti and Dominican Republic at the time. Jamaica wasn't heavily guarded, so it was very easy for the British to just walk in and take over. By the time the Spanish realized, the British soldiers were already all up in While in Jamaica, the British fought against the native islanders, who were the Arawak Indians and the Taínos Indians. They fought against these tribes, drastically depleting them in numbers. Some of the native islanders actually took off into the mountains. It was then that they began to import Africans into the island. Now, the word maroon derives from the Spanish cimarrones, meaning wild or untamed, pertaining to the castaway or a runaway. That name was later changed to Maroons by the British. Most of the Maroons in Jamaica were said to be of the Akan or the Ashanti tribe. They were considered some very ferocious fighters, okay? I wouldn't want to fight them. I would fight with them, but I wouldn't want to fight them. Oh, God. So in 1655, the British came in and took over what we now call Jamaica. Now, this was not a smooth transition. During this time, most of the Spanish actually fled back home, while others fled into the mountains with the other native islanders. Now, two of the main branded Maroons that you would hear most about would be called the Leeward Maroons, which was led in war by Cujo, and the Windward Maroons, which was led in war by Quao. Now, Nanny was the mastermind behind all of the Maroons. These Maroons, they were fierce and steadfast, okay? They just wanted to be left alone, but the British wanted them to comply. Now you have two very different mindsets on a very tiny island. I'm pretty sure you already know where this story is going, because all revolutions start with what? Rebellion. The Maroons, they fled into the mountains, and when necessary, they intermarried with the other native islanders. That would be the Taino, the Arawak, the other Spanish slaves that had fled when the British came in, and the other African slaves. They would form communities in these very rugged mountains and become one with nature, living in accordance with the environment. So they would walk slower and softer, being very mindful to not disrupt the balance of nature. They began to understand plants and learn about what they can eat, what they can't eat. They would also communicate with nature. So you know them bird calls, and they'd be like, caw! This is my bird call. You better not be judging me, because there's some bird out there that understood what I said. It was between me, the bird, and God right now, okay? Well, I find it so impressive that they were also able to slow their breathing and stand very still for hours. Now, as a person with anxiety, I can't even imagine being able to just, for hours, no! So, kudos to them. In these communities, they would raise their own animals. They hunted and grew their own crops, and they also utilized this leaf. I couldn't find the name of it, but it contained a lot of water, so they didn't have to keep running to the river waters and risk their lives, because remember, they're in hiding, and they're trying to keep it that way, right? The art of jerking actually came about in these times. You see, the Maroons, they needed to stay in seclusion as they evaded the British, right? So they would have to create these stealthy fires to make the smoke as less visible as possible. Thus, jerking. I know you like jerk chicken, especially when it comes right out of the trump. Oh. Now, when the British colonizers came into Jamaica and they pushed out the Spanish, they had absolutely no idea what they were signing themselves up for. You see, when the Spanish fled, they had actually left all of their weapons behind, and the Africans collected them for themselves. Duh. The British felt, since there were already black slaves in Jamaica, they really were not in a rush to transport in new slaves. They could just utilize the ones that were there. But these Africans, whoa, no, 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 no. They had a much different agenda. They were not about to be re-enslaved by British colonizers. No, no, no. Don't judge my nails. The African soldiers felt that with the Spanish gone, this technically was their island, and they were not about to be re-enslaved by British colonizers, especially because they knew nothing about the island. Now, the British were at a disadvantage. You see, with the Spanish gone, they had to rely on the residing islanders with the proper knowledge for them to survive. For example, what can they eat? What can't they eat? Where are they going to get clean drinking water? This is a hot country. Sorry, island. This is a hot island. They need shelter. And when is an appropriate time for harvesting? The Maroons were not about to be re-enslaved by people they had to teach. So they began to push back and stage wars against these British colonizers. They would murder these colonizers and burn down the plantation farms. They would lead the freed slaves back to the communities up in Blue Mountain, eastern Portland, and in Cockpit Country, aka the land of the look behind, just west of the island. Now, these Maroons were never defeated, nor did they assimilate into larger groups, which is what truly set them apart from a lot of other Africans. But how did these poorly equipped and widely outnumbered Maroons successfully free themselves from bondage nearly 200 years before emancipation? Why, that would be Nanny. But not just Nanny, you see. Her four brothers, Johnny, Cujo, Kwao, and a compound, played a huge role in this. And without them, I think I might be telling a much different story. Let's just take a moment of silence and to appreciate their bravery and very necessary rebellious nature. Nanny is known best for her exceptional leadership skills. She was a military strategist in guerrilla warfare tactics. She was a healer and a herbalist. And just like many of the other Maroons, Nanny prayed very, very often. Nanny would use her African spirituality to confuse the British. It was said that her knowledge in Obia, which is an African-derived spirituality practice, which is still practiced in parts of Africa, some islands across the world, and still in Jamaica today, is used for good luck, bad luck, mysticism, and charm. Now, the British knew that the Africans had some unknown force that was working with them, so they truly believed a lot of the scenarios that was brought forth to them. Nanny was very good at organizing plans to free slaves. She was a sharpshooter. Although it's said that she had never actually stepped foot in battle, some say that she could actually catch bullets and redirect them back to the sender. That's on some Matrix shit, you know? And you catch all of the bullets. And that was my Matrix, so don't judge me. That's why I never got cast in it. Nanny could also impersonate birds to spy on the British, and then she would learn of their planned raids and already have her people situated and standing in spot waiting for them. Okay? One of the most interesting facts about Nanny is that she once set up a boiling pot that burned with no fire. Like, can you imagine walking across something like that? You just see a pot burning and ain't no fire. Now, she put it in a spot where she knew the British soldiers would walk past, and each passing soldier would inquisitively just, they peep in there like, what's in there? And they would inhale the smoke in the pot. They would continue down their journey, and then they would be met by a string of dead bodies of former soldiers who too had looked in the pot. Basically, the soldiers would just drop dead. Now, do you think this was magic or herbal poisoning? Leave your opinions in the comment down below so I can know if we're on the same page. Nanny would always leave just one soldier to survive. She would always send them back to tell the British of what had transpired out in the mountains. Now, the First Maroon War began in 1728 and would continue for just over a decade against the British colonizers. Truthfully, the Maroons just wanted to be left alone. But it was the British's insistence on this town that truly led to the war. Blue Mountain was in a very strategic location. It was a rugged territory with only one way in, which was a narrow path which was only fit for one person. So you had to enter in single file. It also overlooked Stony River, a 900-foot ridge, making a surprise attack highly unlikely. The Maroons' superior knowledge of this terrain is what truly led them to success. The Maroons had this special tool that really helped them called the abang, which was a horn. They would use this abang to communicate with each other. Now, this could be heard from as far as 5 miles away. Whew! A horn 5 miles away? Damn, I don't even think animals can scream that loud. Now, the abang was coded with a secret language which hasn't been fully decoded to this day. Now, the British, they hated the sound of the abang because as soon as they heard it, it was like, boom, damn, they're discovered. There's no more secret. Surprise, surprise, mother. You're the one that's surprised. I'm not going to swear. That's why I didn't. Now, the abang was said to have been able to tell the Maroons of approximately how many soldiers are coming up and how far out they are. The British were not able to understand the message that was being sent around. So they believed that when the abang was sounded, it was actually raising the spirits of the ancestors. You have to remember, they knew the Africans could do magic. Now, the British did not have a similar communication method because the walkie-talkie had not yet been invented. Now, the Maroons, they would fight from their villages in Maroon Town and Cockpit Country, aka the land of the look-behind. Now, why do they call it the land of look-behind? Well, because soldiers had to look behind them. It was said that some British soldiers would enter facing forward and others would be riding in facing backward, trying to avoid Cujo's sharp shooters. Now, they had to do this because they were no match. Do you know what else also assisted the Maroons in defeating the British? That's right, camouflage. The Maroons had actually invented the art of camouflage. They knew in order for them to be successful, they had to blend in with the environment. And they did just that. Remember when I said that they would slow their breathing and stand very still? Well, they would dress up in their leaves and they would stand very, very still, standing as still as possible, resembling a standing bush. Well, that's not bush. But they carefully chose their positions to fight. Once they were in position, a Maroon would be sent out to run in view of the British soldier. Once the British soldier would see this Maroon, he would quickly take off in the position of a mock tree. Now the British would run down looking for this Maroon, and he would be met with his demise when passing one of these standing bushes. This worked so well that the British, they would go home and tell stories of these murderous trees, chopping off soldiers' heads as they ran past. You have to remember the British knew that these Africans had an unknown force working with them. So these stories were not like just a story to them. This was something they could see. Some of the soldiers wouldn't stick around and many of them died. So they weren't actually able to see who was behind these bushes for them to know that it was indeed the Maroons just dressed up as trees. They did know they could do magic, so it was very plausible to them. There were many times where the British captured Nanny Town, but they were unable to keep it. You see, these Maroons were innovators in guerrilla warfare. They never actually shot standing up. Instead, they would tuck and roll and do stunts similar to what you see on TV. For example, in cowboy movies. Now you see these Maroons in Jamaica, they were some very sharp shooters, which is why they had to ride in one facing forward, one facing backward up in Cockpit Country, because Cujo's shooters were some sharp shooters. You also have to remember that they only had the weapons that the Spanish had left behind. And in my opinion, I believe they were taking these weapons also from the British soldiers that they had killed. So they had to make sure that every bullet counted because they were not being imported new weapons. In 1734, the British finally captured Nanny Town. well, I wouldn't say capture, because the Maroons, they were so tired and they were getting older and they just wanted to relax. And the British, they just kept coming back and coming back and coming back. Like I said, it was their insistence on this town why the Maroons were even fighting back in the first place. They just kept coming back. So the Maroons, they just basically submitted to the British colonizers and gave up their town. Some history books say that in 1734, when the British colonizers did take Nanny Town, that she was killed in the process, but I will let you decide that a little bit later on. The last Maroon War took place in 1738. That is when the British colonizers would come for the Leeward Maroons up in Cockpit country. Now, Cudjoe was already forewarned by a majestic, beautiful lady named Nanny. Yes, she warned him, and Cudjoe had his soldiers sitting there waiting for the British's arrival. He set to a bangman that were to signal when the British were en route. Now, the British, they were not very observant of their surroundings, and the Maroons knew this, and they definitely used that to their advantage. They stationed themselves in camouflage, and some of them hid in the cave that resembled like just a big rock. Ow. Sorry, it's winter time, so I gotta keep my hair very, very hydrated. I'm about to do it, but okay, so yeah. They set a rocking stone that would make noise and signal when the British were in the vicinity they wanted them to be in. Once the alarm was set, they came running from various directions. They came from here, and from here, and from here, and from here, and from there, and from there, and from there, and from there. They came from everywhere. Well, maybe not like here and here, but like they came from everywhere, and they surrounded these British soldiers, and they killed everybody except for the chief, who was sent back with a message. They said, yo, you go tell your people them to go send some more soldiers because we is waiting, all right? Well, okay, they probably didn't say it exactly like that, but it was like, you know, it's somewhere along the lines, right? Now, at this point, the British were stuck. Parliament was debating on making peace with these black slaves, but they were kind of rendered optionless if they truly wanted peace. In 1739, the British made peace with these Maroons, and they actually drafted a treaty. Now, this treaty kind of went against what the Maroons believed in, but they did want peace. The treaty specified. Now the treaty specified. Ain't no more harboring any more slaves. Y'all gotta give them back for bounty. And any crime that happens within the community has to be trialed outside by British or Jamaican law. And on top of that, if Jamaica was ever to go under attack again, yeah, the Maroons, y'all gotta fight with us. Now, Maroons weren't happy. Like I said, they were tired. They were frustrated. They wanted to relax. Now, Nanny was very reluctant on signing this. You see, she advised her brother to not sign it because she knew. She wanted to keep fighting until the entire island was free. Now, let me know down below if you think Nanny could have truly freed the entire island of Jamaica. I want to know if we're on the same page. Cudjoe and the other Maroons, they were tired and they were getting older and they just didn't want to fight anymore. Like 30 years, and I'm pretty sure their whole life. Remember, they're much older than anticipated. So Cudjoe signed. Now remember, Cudjoe was of the Leeward Maroons, right? So now, in 1740, the Windward Maroons led in war by Quao, and Nanny was the mastermind. They were offered a far less favorable treaty that did not specify land. That was a problem. Now, these disputes would often favor the Maroons up in Scotts Hill and in Maroontown as a way to keep peace and prevent the murders of these white farmers. So in 1740s, Nanny actually applied for a land grant and was granted 500 acres of her own town. Now, everybody was wondering, how did Nanny get this land grant? Like, they were only issued to whites, and on top of that, she was like a rebellious woman. Like, you know, I'm almost certain she got it because they did not want that smoke anymore. All right, but she got the land grant and was granted 500 acres. Now, this helped with the expansion of Maroon Town. On Nanny's land grant, it actually states, Negro Nanny and her people transported themselves from Africa, which is why it's believed that she had actually came to Jamaica as a free woman with her own slaves. Nanny was said to have died on her land as a free woman in the 50s, in 1750s. Do you think Nanny died in 1734 when the British conquered Nanny Town, or in the 50s as a free woman? Let me know in the comments down below. So in 1781, another 500 acres was purchased from a man named Charles Douglas to help with the growing expansion of Nanny Town. By the 18th century, there was 5 different maroon towns in Jamaica. They were called Accompong, Trelawney, Scott's Hall, Nanny Town, and Charlestown. In 1976, Jamaica officially declared Nanny a national hero, being the first and only female heroine in Jamaica, right? That's not where I went. In 19, know what happened there. In 1994, Nanny was placed on the $500 bill in Jamaica, which is also referred to as the nanny. The nanny. Y'all send me a nanny, you know? Now, what I find the most fascinating about this story... Oops. What I find most fascinating about this story is that since all crimes had to be trialed outside of the community, you can't find the damn hole. Oh, that's not good. Oh, gosh. But since all crimes were to be trialed outside of the community, the Maroons actually decided that they love each other so much that they just don't commit crimes, right? So it's been actually since 1738. 1738. There has not been not one murder in these maroon towns. Like, that is beautiful. So now when anybody comes and they tell me anything negative towards black people, like black people are so aggressive, they're so angry, they're so hateful, they like to fight, they like to be in conflict, I'm going to use this story as example that, hey, listen, we are actually very, very peaceful people. Like, you just got to leave us alone. Okay? But I find that beautiful. So that is the story of Nanny and her 4 brothers, Johnny, Cujo, Quao, and Accompong, and the Maroons, and how they successfully freed themselves from bondages 200 years before the rest of the island was free. What? I am so, so proud. I hope this story has inspired somebody to continue to fight and fight and fight for your rights, because your rights won't be given. They have to be taken. And I do not mean that in a violent, I am not promoting violence, and I am not promoting anything to do with violence. I am just merely saying that if you want something, you have to be willing to go out there and get it. Okay? I know what's going on in the world right now is hard. It's disgusting. It's frustrating. You don't even want to sometimes go online to see what next bullcrap has happened to our people. But you know what? When you hear stories like this, it just puts that little spunk in you that you had ancestors that were fighting tooth and nail to make sure that they got what they truly deserve. And that is the message that I am sending out today. I hope somebody has been inspired. And if you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe so that you can get notified the next time that I upload If you have any ideas of who you want me to talk about, leave it in the comments below. I will go through them for sure. And I hope you guys all have a beautiful day. If you didn't read this already, have enough courage to start and enough heart to finish, okay? You do what you have to do to keep yourself happy, all right? And make sure you learn something new every day.